PC games, also known as computer games or personal computer games, are video games played on a personal computer rather than a dedicated video game console or arcade machine. Their defining characteristics include a lack of any centralized controlling authority, a greater degree of user control over the video gaming hardware and software used, and a generally greater capacity in input, processing, and output. Home computer games became popular following the video game crash of 1983, particularly in Europe, leading to the era of the bedroom coder. From the mid-90s onwards, PC games lost mass-market traction to console games before enjoying a resurgence in the mid-2000s through digital distribution. The uncoordinated nature of the PC game market and its lack of physical media make precisely assessing its size difficult. History. Early growth. Although personal computers only became popular with the development of the microprocessor and microcomputer, computer gaming on mainframes and mini-computers had previously already existed. OXO, an adaptation of tic-tac-toe for the EDSAC, debuted in 1952. Another pioneer computer game was developed in 1961, when MIT students Martin Gratz and Alan Kotok, with MIT student Steve Russell, developed Space War, on a PDP-1 mainframe computer used for statistical calculations. The first generation of computer games were often text adventures or interactive fiction, in which the player communicated with the computer by entering commands through a keyboard. An early text adventure was developed for the PDP-11 mini-computer by Will Crowther in 1976, and expanded by Don Woods in 1977. By the 1980s, personal computers had become powerful enough to run games like Adventure, but by this time, graphics were beginning to become an important factor in games. Later games combined textual commands with basic graphics, as seen in the SSI Gold Box games such as Pool of Radiance, or Bard's Tale for example. By the late 1970s to early 1980s, games were developed and distributed through hobbyist groups and gaming magazines, such as Creative Computing and later Computer Gaming World. These publications provided game code that could be typed into a computer and played, encouraging readers to submit their own software to competitions. Microchess was one of the first games for microcomputers which was sold to the public. First sold in 1977, Microchess eventually sold over 50,000 copies on cassette tape. As with second-generation video game consoles at the time, early home computer game companies capitalized on successful arcade games at the time with ports or clones of popular arcade games. By 1982, the top-selling games for the Atari 400 were ports of Frogger and Centipede, while the top-selling game for the Texas Instruments T99 4A was the Space Invaders clone T-Invaders. That same year, Pac-Man was ported to the Atari 800, while Donkey Kong was licensed for the Coleco Adam. In late 1981, Atari attempted to take legal action against unauthorized clones, particularly Pac-Man clones. Despite some of these predating Atari's exclusive rights to the home versions of Namco's game, industry crash and aftermath as the video game market became flooded with poor-quality cartridge games created by numerous companies attempting to enter the market, and overproduction of high-profile releases such as the Atari 2600 adaptations of Pac-Man and E.T. grossly underperformed. The popularity of personal computers for education rose dramatically. In 1983, consumer interest in console video games dwindled to historical lows, as interesting computer games rose. The effects of the crash were largely limited to the console market, as established companies such as Atari posted record losses over subsequent years. Conversely, the home computer market boomed, as sales of low-cost color computers such as the Commodore 64 rose to record highs, and developers such as Electronic Arts benefited from increasing interest in the platform. The North American console market experienced a resurgence in the United States with the release of the Nintendo Entertainment System. In Europe, computer gaming continued to boom for many years after. Computers such as the ZX Spectrum and BBC Micro were successful in the European market, where the NES was not as successful despite its monopoly in Japan and North America. The only 8-bit console to have any success in Europe would be the Sega Master System. Meanwhile, in Japan, both consoles and computers became major industries, with the console market dominated by Nintendo and the computer market dominated by NEC's PC-88 and PC-98. A key difference between Western and Japanese computers at the time was the display resolution, with Japanese systems using a higher resolution of 640 by 400 to accommodate Japanese text, which in turn had an impact on video game design and allowed more detailed graphics. Japanese computers were also using Yamaha's FM synth soundboards from the early 1980s. The Amiga X68000 and FM Towns were capable of producing near arcade-quality hardware, sprite graphics and sound quality when they first released in the mid to late 1980s. Growth of IBM PC gaming. IBM, the world's largest computer company, introduced the IBM personal computer in 1981. IBM and others sold some games like Microsoft Flight Simulator, but the PC's CGA graphics and speaker sound were poor, and most customers bought the powerful but expensive computer for business. From mid-1985, however, what Compute described as a wave of inexpensive IBM PC clones from American and Asian companies caused prices to decline. By the end of 1986, the equivalent to a $1,600 real IBM PC with 256K RAM and 2 disk drives cost as little as $600, lower than the price of the Apple IIC. Consumers began purchasing DOS computers for the home in large numbers. By 1987, the PC market was growing so quickly that the formerly business-only computer had become the largest and most important platform for computer game companies. More than a third of games sold in North America were for the PC, twice as many as those for the Apple II, and even outselling those for the Commodore 64. With the EGA video card, an inexpensive clone was better for games than the Commodore 64 or Apple II, and the Tandy 1000's enhanced graphics, sound, and built-in joystick ports made it the best platform for IBM PC-compatible games before the VGA era. By 1988, the enormous popularity of the Nintendo Entertainment System had greatly affected the computer game industry. A KOEI executive claimed that Nintendo's success has destroyed the computer software entertainment market. A Mindscape executive agreed, saying that, unfortunately, its effect has been extremely negative. Without question, Nintendo's success has eroded software sales. There's been a much greater falling off of disc sales than anyone anticipated. A third attributed the end of growth in sales of the Commodore 64 to the console, and Trip Hawkins called Nintendo the last hurrah of the 8-bit world. Experts were unsure whether it affected 16-bit computer games, but Hawkins in 1990 nonetheless had to deny rumors that Electronic Arts would withdraw from computers and only produce console games. By 1993, ASCII Entertainment reported at a Software Publishing Association conference that the market for console games was 12 times that of the computer game market. Computer games, however, did not disappear. By 1989, Computer Gaming World reported that the industry is moving toward heavy use of VGA graphics. While some games were advertised with VGA support at the start of the year, they usually supported EGA graphics through VGA cards. By the end of 1989, however, most publishers moved to it supporting at least 320 by 200 MCGA, a subset of EGA. VGA gave the PC graphics that outmatched the Commodore Amiga, increasing adoption of the computer mouse, driven partially by the success of adventure games such as the highly successful King's Quest series, and high-resolution bitmap displays allowed the industry to include increasingly high-quality graphical interfaces in new releases. Further improvements to game artwork and audio were made possible with the introduction of FM synthesis sound. Yamaha began manufacturing FM synthboards for computers in the early mid-1980s, and by 1985, the NEC and FM7 computers had built-in FM sound. The first PC sound cards, such as Adlib's music synthesizer card, soon appeared in 1987. These cards allowed IBM PC-compatible computers to produce complex sounds using FM synthesis, where they had previously been limited to simple tones and beeps. However, the rise of the Creative Labs Sound Blaster card, released in 1989. Also in 1989, the FM Towns computer included built-in PCM sound, in addition to a CD-ROM drive and 24-bit color graphics. By 1990, DOS comprised 65% of the computer game market, with the Amiga at 10%. All other computers, including the Apple Macintosh, were below 10% and declining. Although both Apple and IBM tried to avoid customers associating their products with Game Machine, the latter acknowledged that VGA, audio, and joystick options for its PS1 computer were popular. In 1991, id Software produced an early first-person shooter, Hovertank 3D, which was the company's first in their line of highly influential games in the genre. There were also several other companies that produced early first-person shooters, such as Arsys Software's Star Cruiser, which featured fully 3D polygonal graphics in 1988, and Accolade's Day of the Viper in 1989. id Software went on to develop Wolfenstein 3D in 1992, which helped to popularize the genre, kickstarting a genre that would become one of the highest-selling in modern times. The game was originally distributed through the shareware distribution model, allowing players to try a limited part of the game for free but requiring payment to play the rest, and represented one of the first uses of texture mapping graphics in a popular game, along with Ultima Underworld. In response to a reader's challenge to find a DOS game that played better than the Amiga version, the magazine cited Wing Commander and Civilization, and added that the heavy MS-DOS emphasis in CGW merely reflects the realities of the market. A self-reported Computer Gaming World survey in April 1993 similarly found that 91% of readers primarily used IBM PCs and compatibles for gaming, compared to 6% for Amiga, 3% for Macintosh, and 1% for Atari ST, while a Software Publishing Association study found that 74% of personal computers were IBM's or compatible, 10% Macintosh, 7% Apple II, and 8% other. 51% of IBM or compatible had 386 or faster CPUs. By 1992, DOS games such as Lynx supported Super VGA graphics, while leading Sega and Nintendo console systems kept their CPU speed at 3 to 7 MHz. The 486 PC processor ran much faster, allowing it to perform many more calculations per second. The 1993 release of Doom on the PC was a breakthrough in 3D graphics, and was soon ported to various game consoles in a general shift toward greater realism. The CD-ROM had much larger storage capacity than floppies, helped reduce software piracy, and was less expensive to produce. Chris Crawford warned that it was a data-intensive technology, not a process-intensive one, tempting developers to emphasize the quantity of digital assets like art and music over the quality of gameplay. Computer Gaming World wrote in 1993 that publishers may be losing their focus While many companies use the additional storage to release poor-quality shovelware collections of older software, or enhanced versions of existing ones, new games such as Myst included many more assets for a richer game experience. To enhance the immersive experience with their unrealistic graphics and electronic sound, early PC games included extras such as the peril-sensitive sunglasses that shipped with The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or the science fiction novella included with Elite. These extras gradually became less common, but many games were still sold in the traditional oversized boxes that used to hold the extra feelies. Today, such extras are usually found only in special edition versions of games, such as battle chests from Blizzard. Contemporary gaming. By 1993, PC games required much more memory than other software, often consuming all of conventional memory. While peripheral device drivers could go into upper memory with DOS memory managers, players found modifying config, sys and autoexec bat files for memory management cumbersome and confusing, and each game needed a different configuration. Computer Gaming World provided technical assistance to its writers to help install games for review. By 1996, the growing popularity of Microsoft Windows simplified device driver and memory management. The success of 3D console titles such as Super Mario 64 increased interest in hardware-accelerated 3D graphics on PCs, and soon resulted in attempts to produce affordable solutions with the ATI Rage, Matrox Mystique, and S3 Verger. Tomb Raider in 1996 was one of the first 3D third-person shooter games and was praised for its revolutionary graphics. As 3D graphics libraries such as DirectX and OpenGL matured and knocked proprietary interfaces out of the market, these platforms gained greater acceptance in the market, particularly with their demonstrated benefits in games such as Unreal. However, major changes to the Microsoft Windows operating system, by then the market leader, made many older DOS-based games unplayable on Windows NT, and later, Windows XP. The faster graphics accelerators and improving CPU technology resulted in increasing levels of realism in computer games. During this time, the improvements introduced with products such as ATI's Radeon R300 and NVIDIA's GeForce 6 series have allowed developers to increase the complexity of modern game engines. PC gaming currently tends strongly toward improvements in 3D graphics. Unlike the generally accepted push for improved graphical performance, the use of physics engines in computer games has become a matter of debate since announcement in 2005 release of the NVIDIA PHYSX PPU, ostensibly competing with middleware such as the Havok physics engine. Issues such as difficulty in ensuring consistent experiences for all players, and the uncertain benefit of first-generation PHYSX cards in games such as Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter and City of Villains, prompted arguments over the value of such technology. Similarly, many game publishers began to experiment with new forms of marketing. Chief among these alternative strategies is episodic gaming, an adaptation of the older concept of expansion packs, in which game content is provided in smaller quantities but for a proportionally lower price. Titles such as Half-Life 2 Episode 1 took advantage of the idea, with mixed results rising from concerns for the amount of content provided for the price.